good afternoon. My name is Chevelle Savage, and I serve on the board of directors of OutCT, and as well as the education chairperson. And this is episode number 5 of Who's in the Neighborhood. Today, we will be chatting with Cindy Lee Alves. Cindy Lee, how are you doing? So excited that you're here with me today.
Yes, I'm excited. Thank you for having me. You are a blessing.
Yeah. Look at you. You know, you're the blessed child, and y'all about to find out why when I read this bio, honey. So listen, Cindy Lee Alves is an award-winning sexologist. Did y'all hear that, y'all? Sexologist with over a decade of experience in facilitating challenging conversations with both adults and young people. They have educated thousands of people on sex and sexuality and wellness with interest in pleasure, gender, and social justice. So listen, y'all, she not only is a sexologist, she has the receipts to prove it. So welcome. Let's just jump right in, right? I know that our viewers are interested to see what a sexologist is. So we're going to talk about that, talk about how you came to be in New London, how you are affiliated with OutCT, what some of the wonderful things that you have on the horizon for us to be able to support you in, as well as anything else that you want to share that we may need to know. Also, y'all, September is Sexual Health Awareness Month, so that's why we also are having so great and happy to have Cindy Lee here chatting with us. So let's just jump on in. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up in New London, Connecticut.
Oh, shucks. Yes, I am a transplant from here. I am from New York, actually, and I always got to pick that up, right? New London is amazing, and I'm super grateful to be here, but my roots are in New York, particularly in Queens and in Nassau County, Long Island. I actually came here, I love the queerness of it, but I came here out of love, right? I was dating someone that lives out here, and when my lover and I came to the decision of cohabitating, I moved here, and now I am a New Londoner and have mad love for it.
How long have you been a New Londoner, Cindy Lee?
Ooh,
or a whaler. I think that's what they call it, right? They say whalers. Is it whaler?
Oh, right. I feel like I need to take a picture by that tail, right? Just like, I feel like
I'm not originally from here either.
We can have a photo shoot, right? 6 feet apart. I'll take pictures. It'll work. But I've been here from the top of like 2017. I think everything just worked out synchronistically. I had a full-time job, because in New York you have to have multiple streams of income, anywhere really, right? But we'll get into that conversation another day. And it was contract funded nonprofit work, and they didn't get recertified, so they were like, either stay here and do some other work. And it was around the time that we were having conversations about cohabitating, so I took all of that as a sign and said, listen to my homies, listen to myself, I had a one-on-one with myself, and I was like, just love, girl. Just go ahead and love. I can do my work. I'm grateful to be able to do my work in New London as well.
Wow, that's awesome. Isn't that something? You came here out of love, right? But the fact that you still had to navigate those conversations with yourself, and then also like seek counsel from people that you trusted, like, should I be doing this? That is a leap to go from New York to New London. There definitely is some varying differences here. I know it was some differences for me when I moved from Virginia to New London. I guess maybe also the same reason for love, because my spouse got a job up here at Con Call, and so she moved up here in 2017, and then I followed in 2018. So I'm kind of like on the cusp of like being here. I've been here 2 years, last July 3rd that just passed. So
awesome.
Yes. Just trying to make it do what it do. So listen, sexologist, what is that?
Oh, no. A lot of things. I think, see, I dance too much. My headphones don't know how to act. Okay. Sexuality is super interdisciplinary, so there's a lot of ways that sexuality professionals show up in the work. For example, with my work is predominantly in education and coaching around that education and having conversations around sexuality and the different intersections that particularly impact system impacted folks. So folks with multiple quote unquote marginalized identities. So yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you a question. So when you said it impacts people with different marginalized identities, can you speak more a little bit about that? Like, especially when it comes down to like members of the LGBTQIA community, like how does it impact them differently? And then in COVID, like how are you navigating that? Like, what are some of the things that our viewers could like pull from that?
Yeah, for sure. Because when I talk about system impacted, particularly if we're talking about LGBTQIA plus folks, we're talking about access, right? Systemically, for thanks, white supremacy, colonization, what have you, the structures that are in place, the power that is in place, it has not had a history of centering us, right? And us in many intersections, because I love my LGBTQ fam, my queer fam, my non-binary trans fam, but it looks different if that is your identity and you're also Black, or you're also bigger bodied or a fat person, or you're also, you have a disability of some sort. Like those layers impact how you're seen in this world, how you have access to care and how you are supported and centered.
That's true. That's so true. And I think that's, first of all, COVID-19 has taught me so many things about myself. It has taught me so many things about this country. And it has taught me so many things about how people who look like me, who are Black and brown, identify as queer, or LGBTQIA, or non-binary, also who are different, who have different ability status, who have different body types and body sizes, right? So I always joke, I say, I check all the boxes. I'm Black, queer, femme, fat. I got all the things, right? All the intersecting identities. And so I know for me, when I'm looking for a provider or someone who I'm trying to gain some type of healing from, I look for somebody who looks like me, who can identify with one of my identities, right? So can you talk a little bit about why that part is important?
Yeah, for sure. Let me give some examples of some hypothetical folks that will exist, right? So something like me going in to see medical care, I can get activated or not feel seen by simply looking at the paperwork they provide to me, right? Does it say sex, or does it limit the amount of identities that exist? Is it asking those questions with the intention of providing care that's more in alignment for my identities, or is it just you're filling out demographics? Like, what is the intention behind it? Are you invested in serving folks that are system impacted, that are queer identified, especially Black and brown folks, especially Black and brown trans folks? Are you giving a one-size-fits-all kind of approach to people, or are you person-centered, client-centered, patient-centered in their care? Especially with COVID-19, because now we're adding these additional layers. We've already been dealing with several oppressions and inequalities, and now we have to have this extra layer of being mindful around, are we housing insecure now? Were we not in the, are there folks that are not, have not come out to the people that live in their home? Are they now, is there a possibility where their housing is in danger, or their healthcare is in danger because of employment? There's all these layers that can happen, and it impacts people exponentially when the oppressions overlap.
So one thing that you brought up that when I was reading your bio or whatever, that you do education from a social justice lens, but also centering pleasure. So like, what are some things, and then when you mentioned about like partners, like I know, my paid job, I therapize for a living. And so COVID-19 has affected some of the people that I am fortunate enough to be able to support in their wellness journey in different ways. Sometimes because the fact of that, like, if you don't feel safe in your home, and then now you can't leave your house, or you can't be your full authentic self in your home, because you may have to go back in the closet, right? Because now maybe you're a college student and now you have come back home, and you were John at school, because that's how you rocking, right? Your trans identity. But then when you get back home, you got to be Jane. And so what does that do to your mental health? And also, like, if you got a boo thing, but your boo thing identifies as trans as well, and then you can't really have a conversation with them. So, like, what are some things that our viewers can, like, connect with that still can bring them pleasure, still can bring them joy in all of this?
Yeah, for sure. I think just naming where we are and locating ourselves within our permissions to give ourselves pleasure and joy is a big thing, right? A lot of us, and I won't say everyone, because some of us didn't have the luxuries like that I had, right? So even though I was impacted business-wise and not being able to travel and teach, I have a home. I have a lover that I'm in a healthy relationship, and I'm not impacted in those ways. Not everybody has access to that. So it's finding where you are and what's, being, I don't want to say harm reduction, but like what would work with what you have. So some of us have children and now have to doubly, provide childcare, also be the teacher or be the substitute or like the assistant teacher if there's virtual learning happening. Are you finding yourself time? Are you finding that safe space, even for 5 minutes? Are you reconnecting to your breath? Because that, to me, has something to do with your sex and sexuality too. What brings you pleasure? It doesn't necessarily have to be sexual behaviors, but it could be giving yourself some time to reflect on what your desires are and figure out and honoring them, right? Because I've heard a lot from the participants in my workshops and my clients feel a lot of shame and guilt, right? And that's without COVID. So now there's COVID, there's, an uprising and a revolution centering Black and brown, Black bodies in particular. Where are we finding space for our pleasure and our joy? Is that a priority? Is that added to your to-do list, right? For some of us, it is explicitly sexual, right? I tell a lot of my students all the time, masturbation, that works out, right? You don't have to worry about transmitting COVID. You're able to connect to your body in ways that you may or may not have given yourself permission to before. And there's tons of studies and lived experiences that talk about the benefits of orgasms, if that's something that's interesting to you, because there are a lot of folks that are also asexual or aromantic or on that spectrum where like that's just not their thing, and that's valid too, because sexuality is a part of your overall wellness, not what you do with your pieces and with whom. That's a part of it, but it talks about so much.
I'm so glad that you brought it up about sexuality, and that people automatically assume that pleasure has to do with sexuality. Pleasure has to do with the act, right? And that it's hard. And then also I love how you brought up about the asexuality component, because there are folks who identify as asexual who may not be interested in any type of physical connection, but like romantic connection, such as like intimacy, like intellectual intimacy and things of that nature. And so I think, say a little bit about that, because a lot of people, I think our asexual siblings don't sometimes get the due that they deserve. People just automatically like wipe them out, but like, oh yeah, whatever. It's just like folks who identify as bisexual. Historically has been folks who be like, oh, you have to choose a side. No, you don't.
Right.
No, you
don't.
Like,
it's a phase, right? How many of us have heard it's a phase, and now there's some of us that say it to other folks, right? Like, oh, you're not really bi, right? Like, that's just a step to get to it. You'll get there, right? But like, no, that's an experience. And bisexual, and I say so often, language is a shapeshifter, right? So like bisexual used to mean like literally two, and now it's across genders. And there are trans folks who are bisexual, who are pansexual. There are asexual folks, right? And like even the different spectrum. And I'm going to continue to learn language because it's centered around the folks that are using the language and shifting and transforming it. So I'm always going to learn new things, and that's the beauty and the privilege to have this responsibility to continue to do this work as the things evolve, right? Like there wasn't a term for demisexual, for example, right? That's an identity where like you cannot really get sexual pleasure, at least in my experience of the term, without an emotional connection I've seen students have like these aha moments, like, oh, that's a thing, like there's a term for that, and feel seen and be like, oh, I want to, play with this, and I want to be able to be like, oh, this word fits for me, and that works, right? Because a lot of things that have to do around sex and sexuality, there's a lot of value-based judgment, there's a lot of guilt and shame around that, from our culture, from society at large, but even within our structure, within our family structures, our culture, our what community means to us. Or is your community rooted in the church? Is your community rooted in a particular organization? And having to have that cost benefit analysis for, I'm not trying to get like pragmatic, but having to look at maybe, coming out as this identity or continually coming out at these different identities, at what cost is that, right? To honor that there are folks that are in the closet for reasons, for their survival, for their mental health, for being able to cope, right?
Exactly.
Adding trauma to that. Like there's so many layers to the lived experience because we're humans, right? The thing of humanity is there's so many ways that we can exist in this world, and it's being able to work on justice so that we can all exist equitably and just be able to be free and be able to center our pleasure and be able to love who we love in all spaces and places, and not have to worry about being harmed or being criticized or having it impact like your social capital, because that's important for folks.
Exactly. I love all of those things that you just said. I love all of those things. Also too, what I really can engage with is language, right? Language use is imperative. It is important. And language matters because it shapes how we navigate the world, right? How we interact with folks. And so the fact that when you say when you have your students, then when they realize like, oh, that how I'm feeling is a thing, like when there's an aha moment and they're like, oh, that's what that is, then I'm okay with that. I remember when I worked at Virginia State, I've had students who would be like, Ms. Malsavage, I really identify as trans, but at home, I identify as lesbian because my family gets it. They don't get trans identity. They don't understand what that is. They can't wrap their head around it. And I'm like, I get it. I said, but listen, you can be anything that you want in Ms. Malsavage's office, okay? Because I will continue to affirm you with glittery fucking unicorns, all right? Because that's all that matters. Okay. So, but the fact of when you were talking about language and that, how that affirms people in such a deep and meaningful way, and also how it connects directly to your pleasure. You don't even realize that, like making those connections around that. Like if there is shame and there is guilt and there is all of this kindred trauma, how can you have pleasure if you got all of that on your brain?
Right.
How can you have pleasure, right? So I love that. I love that you said those things. So listen, tell me about your involvement with OutCT. I know you've been here a little bit longer than I have.
Yeah.
So,
Well, when I first moved here, I was like, all right, where's the queer orgs, right? Where's the orgs that are in alignment with my values and what's important to me? And OutCT was the first organization that I seen through my Googling, because everything is Googleable. And I connected with folks. The first time I think I went to like a New London Pride, and they had a people of color cookout, where it was supposed to be centering folks of color, connecting with folks. I was able to meet a bunch of people that are on the board. I connected with you at the Pride this year, and I appreciated it because that was the first time I left my house aside from like doing my joyful movement in the morning. So that was like very social distance oriented that I appreciated. I was able to be like, hi, from over here, like we're here, we're good. And everybody was honoring it and still had a good time. We had, Erica Ortiz's amazing video was like released, and I'm like, oh, I feel so cool, I know you, right? Because I've connected with a bunch of folks locally through like Cultured, through Alter Therapy, because I feel, despite not knowing folks for the years and years, we see and understand that we have value in our work, and we value each other and our ideals and who we want to center are connected in those ways, right? So we are all, quote unquote, doing the work in different ways, and how beautiful it is to have that community and collaborate so that we can offer things that the community needs and wants, right? Because there are folks here that I'm sure that appreciate the different things that are happening with these new events throughout our spaces, and it came from collaboration and networking.
Exactly. Yeah, I think, you know, and I may be biased because I do serve on the board for OutCT, but I think our virtual Pride was awesome, and the fact that you really appreciated it. And you know, we had like a mini watch party where it was invitation only, and it was socially distanced so everybody could be safe. But it was just great, and it was fantastic, and just like all of the work in the behind the scenes stuff that had to go into making that, like I'm just so blessed to be a part of a board and who allows me to also thrive in some of my ideas that I have, and how they've never said, Chevelle, you crazy. They're like, okay, let's see how we can do that. You know, so like who's in the neighborhood, right? So that's one of the things as well. So that's awesome. Now, Cindy, I know you had mentioned that you really haven't been impacted in other ways that other people have, but how has your business been impacted by COVID-19? Have you had to shift in any way?
Yeah, I think 2020 has been a very interesting year, and if you don't journal, I suggest you journal so that you have an archive of what's going on. For me, you know, from the time that I came here, at that point, I was in a PhD program working on my dissertation. I was doing sole proprietorship, so I was getting gigs and consultant work. And this year I was like, all right, I'm gonna, you know, be official tissue and put in my LLC. And I started working on my LLC around January, February, right? And then life happened. And that's cool because, you know, particularly for folks, for Black and brown folks, for queer folks, we are adaptable, right? Not to say that we want to, right? Like I have complicated feelings around resiliency, right? But we shift. We understand that water can be gentle and it can also smack us on our ass, right? So I've seen that. I've seen collaboration still happening. You know, a lot of my gigs got canceled, gigs that I was really excited about. You know, for example, I was going to go to Costa Rica with survivors who were also femmes of color, along with Jamanica Eborn and some other folks, to do a retreat called Tending the Garden, right? So it broke my heart, and I had some other, you know, opportunities, but things got canceled, things shifted. Things are not off the table. It's just, how are we moving? So I've had the privilege to be able to have access to the internet and to a computer, know how to play with Zoom already have had experience working and doing virtual classes because I've done adjunct work online. And if not, I have people around me that we help each other out. Be like, oh, they do Zoom backgrounds now. Okay, cute. Let's make this happen. Let's show each other how these things work. Because we all can eat. We all can be able to bring things to folks that aren't able to leave the house if they have access to the internet and to computers.
Yeah. I think, so I'm glad that you were able to shift, and I know that you are heartbroken about not being able to go to Costa Rica. That sounds like an amazing opportunity and experience. And I think we all have had to shift in some way, some shape, form, or fashion. I know that I am not the most tech savvy person, but I've been having to do workshops as well and figure out how to do the breakout rooms, honey, and share my screen and all the things. And I had to like really shift I had to reframe and shift my mindset, child, because I was like, this is a lot. But I was like, listen, I have these things called bills that still need to be paid. So, you know, I got to keep working. You know, I got to keep therapizing. I got to keep educating. I got to keep training. I got to keep doing all of that. So what does that look like? So you're right. And so, but I also recognize that also is a privilege that I have, because everybody doesn't have access to a computer. Everybody doesn't have access to internet. Everybody doesn't have access to a place to be able to work, right? Like, you know, so many clients, I'm like, listen, go to your car. You know, they don't even have a space to have a therapy session except it's in their car because they have all their family home. And like, you know, if we talking about the family in therapy, well, you can't be in front of the family.
Right.
That ain't gonna work out. It's gonna be some rumble in the jungle when you get off the phone with Miss Chevelle. And I don't want that. I don't want you to have none of that smoke, okay? So anyway, that's where we are.
My business. Yes.
So what is you said what?
I said, my business is in the street, right? Like I gotta find a safer place to be able to share and have my one-on-one with my therapist.
Absolutely. So what's on the horizon for Cindy Lee Alves? I know that you said you've been having some things going on. What can number one, tell us how our viewers can connect with you. Are you on social media? Tell us how we can follow you. Also tell us some of the things that you have coming up that we can connect and support you with. I do know that I would love to be able to feature you again in February, the Love Month, and maybe you can give us, you know, our viewers some tips around how we can love each other, love on each other, and experience pleasure, right, in different ways, different facets. So if you're open to that, I would love for us to be able to collaborate with that.
Absolutely.
And they're going in a couple of months. Look.
Quick, look, it's September. I don't even know what happened. I don't know. It's
Chad, I will be 5 and 1 next Sunday. And I'm like, I don't understand.
I'm so glad. Celebration.
Thank you, baby Black Jesus, for letting me turn 50 last year. The Lord said this fool will cut up if she turned 50 in the quarantine birthday.
Are you the event planner? Would you have had like a big watch party with gala, but Zoom? Like, you think about what you would have
actually I'm kind of having that. My little sister's planning something like that for me now. so, yeah, I'm over the top. When it comes to my birthday, I'm over the top. Look, but I'm also over the top with everybody else's birthday, because you know why? Because birthdays are important, because that's the day that you entered into this universe. Yes. My mom always taught me that. And so that's one of the values that I really hold on to. So I'm always so glad when people who I care about or who I support or who I'm in company with, when they are born. I'm like, I'm so glad you were born. Yes. I'm so glad you were born. Yes. So that's why. So birthdays are important to me, but they also are important to people that I also navigate space with too. So tell us, back on to like, what can we look for you?
All right. Let's get out of the Virgo celebration mode, because I was ready. I was like, is there checklists? Because I'm like, you said your birthday is this month. I know the tea. So yes, I'm on the interwebs. You can find me predominantly on my whole government. So cindyleealves.com. You can subscribe to my monthly newsletter. That is where you'll get the most updates. I'm also on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Cindy Lee Alves. For those of you who are into auditory love, I have a podcast called Sex on Shuffle. It's a little bit candid. Right? I honor all types of language in that space, but it's basically, I use pop culture, media, things that I've seen on the interwebs, new music I'm listening to, and I talk about the teachable moments within that and using that, because I've done that so much in my teaching, right? To bring current things and to center it and use it as an opportunity to think critically around sex and sexuality. So you can find me on my podcast on all podcast platforms as Sex on Shuffle. And the best place is to connect with me on my website, because through my new LLC, Ascension Institute, I'm going to be focusing on more of my professional development work, educational services, and coaching for healing professionals. So folks who want to be a little bit more sex positive, sex critical, socially just, and incorporate that into their work. I want to be able to support that, so that in turn you're supporting us, right? You're supporting folks that look like me, that have been through the experiences, that have multiple intersecting system impacted identities that need to be honored and provided care for, and that's tailored for them.
Wow. Well, listen, viewers, y'all heard all of that now. All these great things, right? Make sure, is it Sex on Shuffle? That's the podcast?
Sex on Shuffle, yes.
All right, all right. So listen, tune in to Sex on Shuffle. You can find her on the Book of Faces, honey, the Gram of Insta, and the Twitter, right?
Yes,
All
and
of
the
these
tube
things.
of you,
Listen.
and the tube of you. Okay, because I see what you're doing. The tube of you. I have the podcast there if you need captions. I got you.
And the tube of you. Yes. All of the things on the intranet, okay? So all of the things. Listen, I have truly, truly enjoyed talking with you. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective, your views, this wonderful information for our viewers. Again, tell us how we can reach you. So just in case people weren't listening, honey.
Yes, it's my whole government, www.cindyleealves.com. Cindy Lee Alves on the interwebs, Sex on Shuffle. I appreciate y'all in advance. Thank you for having me here.
No problem. Thank you for supporting OutCT. We appreciate it.
Yes.
And you.
I'm looking forward to February. Bye-bye.
Oh, absolutely.